Well, I don't have exactly an hour to do this video. Why do I start a video like that? Anyway, so a tree cannot properly grow into what it was meant to be if it is constantly being moved. And usually, if it's moved by anything, it's an external source, not itself. So, be like a tree, planted in the water, unmoving, and grows very strong, and becomes eventually what it was meant to be. Anyway, that's the start of it, I suppose. I had written in a notebook something I was going to talk about, and it had a lot in it, and it was very fruitful, meaty. It had a lot of good in it, but as I've stated before, life doesn't always happen the way you want it to. Now, this video is going to make it look like I'm really fat. I have no idea how I'm making this happen. But no, I'm not fat, trust me. No, and that's my shoulder, not my shirt. So, yeah, I'm risen. Very strong. Yeah. Actually, to some degree, my tum pushes out. People call me fat. It's okay. It's easy to mistaken. Some people, their bellies are protruding because not of fat, but because the stomach is so big. And that's me, because I have a rather big stomach. It's genetic, really, but also I do like to eat. And thus I have more of a responsibility to take care of myself nutritionally, as well as being mindful of what's going on in the inside, iron, and beyond. That way, I actually just mostly focus on proteins, carbs, and other such, because that's how the body works. So if I have a generic diet, it should be just fine, right? Not everybody is the same. So even if I gave you my diet, which is pretty simple, I don't always follow it. I wouldn't even ask anybody else to just always follow a diet. Don't ever do that. It really makes you depressed. Don't do that. Be vigilant, but don't be excessive or stuck on it, because it'll really drag you down. My diet particularly revolves more around the don'ts and a very few do's, okay? No oil. Try to consume as very, very minute amounts of oil, because oil is not necessarily a natural part of your body. Like, it produces oil, but it doesn't actually consist of oil. Like, it doesn't use oil. It can generate, or as a byproduct with oils, that's technically where your fats are having it. Your fats have oil in them. But anyway, yeast/bread. Most of your body has nothing really to do with it, any of those. So that would be an extra, something that your body would just have to deal with if you put it in there. And another one is sugar. Now, don't get it twisted. I exempt fruit from sugar, because fruit has natural sugar that your body does process and loves the other stuff that comes with it, okay? So don't get that twisted. Don't even let anybody else tell you differently. That's not how that works. Now, granted, nutritionally, sugars have classifications. There are good sugars, there are bad sugars, but when I say sugars, I mean the sugars that are not natural to the body. Your body has a lot of things going on in it, and it has a lot of ingredients. So if I were to tell you don't eat that lead, that would be true, but also don't eat that iron, okay? Now, if you're going to consume iron, first, you're an idiot. But that, again, is where I'm telling you that's not where I'm coming from. No. So, what is not normal to your body is technically excess and extra. So, when you take the sugars that come from fruit, yeah, they're extra. So, they can be very dangerous. So, you would need to watch out for those. Absolutely. But take consideration of what comes with the fruits and vegetables. Okay? Fruits and vegetables offer a variety of things the body does in fact need. So if you don't consume for those needs, then and you're afraid of the sugars, well, then perhaps an alternative source to get those. This is where life can get very complicated. So let's say you have diabetes. You're probably not going to eat an apple because it has sugar in it, right? But what about all the other beneficial stuff that comes from eating an apple? First off, the flavor's great. But second, is it really the texture? I mean, isn't that just like a culinary pleasure, texture? Anyway, but the minerals, the beneficial stuff that comes with the apple, can you really get that elsewhere and still get the pleasures, the culinary pleasures? We try. We try. So, with that being stated, let's move on. It's just a typical diet explanation. So, those are the three things you really want to stay away from. Okay? The things that you do actually want in the diet is as follows. You do want meats. Meats are a very healthy source of a variety of things, depending on how you cook it. But let's go for the simplest things. Proteins, irons, like metals that your body would need. Well, there you go. Now, yes, there are aminos that you could totally get, but the aminos and bacteria that are good for you to consume, usually those two are if you keep it raw. And the only meats I feel that you could probably get by with keeping raw is like goat meat. I feel like goat meat and sheep. Goat, ram, sheep, pretty similar. I think you can get by with those. Now, when it comes to the other meats, I'm not really fond of keeping any of those. Usually, if you, if you boil beef, it's not unheard of. It's just, no pun intended, it's rare. Very rare. But usually, if you boil the meats that are not what I said, so like beef or deer or pork or chickens, stuff like that, if you boil those, you can extract all that is technically still active in the juices and use it as either one broth or what is that? Lard. Anyway, it acts like a butterish kind of thing. It's a lard. I'm having a brain fart. Anyway, from my pronunciations, most people will get what I'm trying to say, and thankfully, okay, Lord, I'm still gonna try and say it because I'm trying to get it out of my head. It's not working. It's right there though. Anyway, so those are things. You can even make buttermilk out of it, but it'll be way different than the normal buttermilk that you would be used to today. That's for sure. Some people also use the extracts as means to get oils, and they can use those oils for like baking cakes and stuff, bread. That's not unheard of. Stuff that I actually already did say to stay away from, but we're also talking stuff like crackers and such, which is good. Unleavened bread, they could totally do it for that too. It's not unheard of. It's, like I said, rare. It's just something that is an acquired taste or an acquired method. It's rare. Yeah. Anyway, so I do like to eat any meats, really. Any meats. I've dealt with that. I don't like eating organs. Like, liver's not my thing. But, and I've never eaten a heart. So I can't really go with that pun. But please, look. I've stated fruits, vegetables, and meat. Now let's go with the other stuff. Let's go with drinks. Like water, essential. Obviously, water is essential. Because if you don't drink enough water, your body can't process everything. And you know what? This is where it gets really wild. You know when I said the sugars come from fruits and vegetables and other things? Well, more fruits than vegetables, but still. Well, if you don't drink enough water, you'll get more of that sugar fat than you will get the minerals from fruits. Strangely enough, your body needs water to do the processing it needs to do properly. So you got meats, vegetables, and fruits, but now you got water. Now, what else do you got? Well, you got dairy stuff, I guess. So you can get milk from just about any life that produces it. But we'll start with the simple ones. Well, yeah, you got cow milk, but if you go to the store, it's not going to be the same as if you go to the farm. So when you go to the farm, they do the milk. They get the milk prep ready. Still got all the cream and other stuff like that. And it's really weird to say it's cream, okay? But they do scoop it all out, most of it out, okay? And they filter it, so it's all just the milk. And that's where we come up with the whole idea of 1%, 0%, or 2%, or whatever, you know. Because that whole milk, that's the cream level, you know, what remains. And there's more flavor in it. But if there's more than just 2%, it starts getting really more of an acquired taste at that point. Anywho, so you got teas. I love teas, dude. Seriously, I love teas. You could suggest that coffees are fine, but you have to use water to do it, and it comes with the process. And if the process is done wrong, you get too much of one thing and not enough of the other, and the imbalance causes issues. So with all that being in mind, guess what? I can also say fruit juice. Now, I've already said fruit, so we're not going to go back to that. And the juices are extracts, so you got more sugar than you do the original other stuff that comes with it. You have to watch out at that point. Again, more water than juice at that point. No different than if you were to do like something like a energy drink or something that is a metabolism booster or restores your electrolytes, something that is unusual, or B vitamins that you need. More water is necessary because again, all these things, you can totally consume them and enjoy, be happy and merry with all of it, but if you don't have enough water, the processing will definitely not happen. Okay, so what about sodas? Well, sodas are actually very bad for you at all in general. There's nothing good about it. But if you don't have enough water, then sodas are more like a treat. And if you drink more of a treat than you do your water and necessities, then there you go. That's kind of where the obesity comes from. Now, genetically speaking, we can inherit the sins of our ancestors, essentially. So if they did real heavy on one thing, say alcohol or sodas or something of that nature, well, here we are. We have to deal with the repercussions because we can just as easily wind up with secondhand problems. That's what we want. That's what we want, right? Anyway, so with all that being said, I know that's like 14 minutes of stuff. Anyway, I got distracted. Like I said, I had a notebook. It had a whole bunch of stuff on it. So I guess instead of talking about that, why don't I just simply talk about, what should I talk about? I've talked about interests before and how they drive the current community. I mean, we have a world built on personal interest and personality and preferences. One of the things that popped in my head with that, though, is how sex sells greater than fashion. So if fashion wants to keep up, they've got to keep up with what also sells, and thus sexual attributes, right? So as the market believes and hinges on is a constant evolution, if you will, to I guess drive an update to the like a trend. So if it doesn't trend, then that's not the direction we should go. Thus, you're feeding off of your customers. So if your customers don't find it sexual enough, if your customers don't find it fashionable enough, then why make it? Why sell it? Right? Same goes with the industry for vehicles, or gaming industry, or craft industry, color industry. The colors are a unique facet to research because usually you would think brown would be a totally terrible color for fashion. But no, it's not. No, it's more cultural than it is fashion, I guess. And so it fits into fashion just fine. But what about vomit colors? Ooh. Strangely enough, if you're on enough plant-based amazingness, I guess I could have said that better, but whatever. Then you would find yourself in this gypsy shop. I feel because I've been to a gypsy shop before, and the only first thing that popped in my mind is all the negative influences to their culture that I have been acquainted with. And I thought to myself, that's a horrible way to remember a culture, is all the negatives. You don't ever focus on the positives. And when I thought of that, I felt that maybe even the sexual over fashion was pretty similar to that. You're always focusing on the negative rather than the positive. If you're married and you have kids, then it probably doesn't bother you that much, or perhaps you've been invested into the community long enough where you're callous to it. So what I say about the negatives to a sexual business, marketplace, what have you, and how it influences the fashion side of it and vice versa, but yet somehow sex sells more than fashion. Look at how we have adapted or evolved in our animes and our cinematic universes or marketplace. It has drastically changed. But back then, we see things like that, we're like, oh man, I'm aroused. But now we look back into the past and we're like, how did my grandparents ever get aroused with that? Again, as our marketplace evolves, so apparently we have evolved. And we evolve before we realize it, and that's when we look at our new marketplace and our entertainment systems, and we wonder, where have we gone? Why have we come this far? Why have we come this way? Is it bad? Is it okay? I don't know. I feel like, as even some of the clothing that covers everything seems like it does too much arousal. So if I were to try and, as a construction worker, for example, if I was to be a construction worker and I had people around me that had arousing features because their clothing are emphasizing their arousing features, I don't think I'd be focused, now would I? So my job wouldn't be getting done. Oh, but that's a personal thing. You should be focused. That's you. Let me be me. And you do your job. I know, but shouldn't we be helpful to one another, maybe? I mean, I'm not suggesting that when you wake up in the morning and you try and clothe yourself that you should be mindful of everybody that you're going to come in contact with, because why should it matter to other people what you wear, right? Because it's what you want to wear. But there's a point where the clothing we wear, the fashion of today, should not disrupt the minds and focuses of other people. So I feel like we could really wear some amazing things without the arousal feature that we have like in entertainment. Because in entertainment we can get away with it because people go there to watch that, but people go to places like a grocery store and they go there to shop, not look at arousing features. That's where I'm getting at. It's a time and place for everything, sort of thing. Like, it's not really wrong, but there's a time and place for everything. So if I were to have my wife wear something that it arouses me, so why not, right? And she's around me all the time, but she, by herself, she goes to the grocery store, and you know what? She's turning heads. And I feel like that's not exactly what we should be doing. Like I said, a time and place for everything. So, is it good? Is it bad? I feel like it's the application of it, timing and placement of where you wear things that are arousing, or alternate fixations. I guess draws the attentions of people around you. So you could wear something that's attractive, it's fashionable. That's arousing even, but not actually draw an actual attention of those around you. So a fixation type attention. But you could be like, oh man, dude, that is so sick, or that is so awesome, or that is so beautiful, that is so sexy. Hey honey, look at that. Would you get that? That sort of thing. That's fine, I guess. But if it's like drawing the attention of somebody who's honorable to their wife, I often catch myself, getting the attention of my wife and saying, check out what she's wearing. I feel like that's too much, Like, it's just generic clothing, but for some reason, it does what it should not do. So I feel like that's where it can be wrong. But even the most fashionable doesn't always do it. But then some of the times it's the most simplest of clothing that does it, and it's whack, right? So there's always a place and time for everything. Maybe the wisdom would come into knowing the difference of when and where. Now, what if I were to suggest where your money goes? Well, your money is yours, right? You can do whatever you want with it, right? It's yours, right? Well, there's a statement of wisdom I heard from someone. Being rich and being poor, you can always be satisfied with either one. What makes you not satisfied with either one is what you do with it, but it's also if you don't share it. If you're not sharing and you're hoarding, then eventually you become depressed. So, like, you can have everything in the world, or you can have nothing in the world. You can be happy either way, but it's the balance. Like, it's like a container where you're filling the container, but what if the container's not giving out, like not sending out? So if it gets too full, eventually it goes boom, and guess what? You have all this, you have it all, but it's most certainly not all together. So eventually, after a while, it'll go kaboom. It'll be everywhere, and technically you'll have everything but nothing. But what if you had all of it and you gave it to somebody who could totally use it, and you could tell them, like, hey, look, I could always buy another, but I'll let you, borrow this, or maybe even let you have it, But if you're okay with it, just give it back. When you can. Yeah, the sharing is letting people it's like a farm, I guess. If you're growing a farm, you have all this fruit, but if you keep hoarding it, it all goes bad. So you're wealthy, but at the same time, no, you're not, because eventually all your farm will go bad because the spoiled portions will rot the good portions faster than you grow. So it's a more or less don't hoard, share, because eventually it all goes to poison and or rot or rust and stuff like that. So if you have nothing, you still technically have yourself. So you could have internal fruit, not in a terrible way, more of a personal personality type thing. You can give of yourself emotionally, or maybe knowledge or wisdom, and most times, if not all times really, knowledge and wisdom and understanding are worth greater, and they always are worth more than gold and silver. But to some people, they make gold and silver faster than they ever make their intelligence and wisdom and understanding. So, I mean, give everything away, or you buy and sell, invest, and you just keep getting more money, but you're really not smarter than the next Joe, and often in some restaurant, and neither wise. So, I mean, there's people that are really rich. They're not really smart or wise. And then there are some people that are really, really dead poor and miserable. And there's some of the nicest people, most understanding people, knowledgeable and wise. So you'd think that, wouldn't it be more logical that the wise and smart and intelligible and understanding people would be richer than those who have nothing? But the world we live in is, we live off of a world of desire. So if you can provide me my desire, then I will provide you with some form of currency. Back in the days, it was like a trade for trade. So I give you food if you give me entertainment. That was one of the things. And the marketplace has most certainly evolved to, or made a major shift into something completely different. So it's not the same anymore. Scientifically, let's go with that one. That one's a big one because the government and science go harshly together. Harshly. Rarely will you see a scientist that tells its people that it associates with, boy, I love the government. Or, boy, do I just love how I can't get paid for my services. Okay, look, just because you're smart doesn't mean you're rich. Like, you could be like the coolest and greatest researcher, or somebody who comes up with all the answers, but in reality, you're just as poor as the next Joe down the street, like I said. But when I say science harshly, goes so wonderfully with the government, obviously there's a lot of sarcasm there, because the government loves to pull science into its own corner so it can govern and and trap. So eventually you have limitations. But here's the bonus for this. If science gets out of control, because we can learn things exponentially if we really wanted to, we can really pick stuff up and go with it. We probably could have been traveling outside into other parts of the universe if we really didn't control ourselves. But we'd also be resurrecting people from the dead, because we wouldn't have any moral control or boundaries. All of that is very possible. You could definitely bring people back from the dead. Science is not limited towards what you can do. It's what you understand and what you know, and blah blah blah. But there's got to be wisdom involved and self-control when it comes to doing stuff like uncovering science, that which is undiscovered. Because if you're not morally sane, you'll find yourself doing things you really ought to not be doing. Now, there is tough ways of doing things, and then there is the correct way of doing things, and there is the complex way of doing things. There's so many different ways of doing it that we could market it and say, oh, but this is my way of doing it. You got to find a different way of doing it. So that's where the market skewers science. No different than government, if not in the correct hands and for the right reasons, skewers science as well. The discovery of what already is. So the more you skewer the discovery of what already is, the more you'll just simply find different avenues rather than just simply finding out the correct way of, messing with reality, I guess. If you want to mess with reality, I would suggest doing it the right way. But with how the government is and how the marketplace is, you'll never find anybody succeeding with that. Unfortunate, really, because we could achieve so much if we just simply allowed the marketplace and government to just sustain morally rather than a system of power or control. With that being said, family is hardly that much different. There's plenty of families out there that they want to maintain a system of power or control so that they can govern how quickly growth there is. Personally, as a father, I want my children to grow, but I'm not going to limit their growth. However, I might systematically try to guide their growth until they can systematically guide their growth morally on their own. Wow. Going back to science. It had nothing to do with what just happened, but God forbid, right? Anywho, the reason why we have so many sicknesses and diseases and cancers and blah, blah, blah is because one of two things. We're playing with reality or science in ways that we shouldn't. Or two, we really just want the marketplace to survive and thrive. And if we keep curing people and giving them the absolute cure, then eventually the marketplace will crash in various ways. And it'll cascade crash and we'll have problems. Now look, I'm all for a system that is not driven by government or marketplace. But here's the thing. We have too many people that would disagree with that, and we have revolution or rebellions. So to have a one world order, it would require everybody to understand how to get onto a platform that we can all agree on. If we were to eliminate the government and marketplace safely, we would have to have some form of moral system. The moral system would be the new government, not people, but rather a series of understood moral statutes and understandings where we would just simply guide as a people and as a whole, planet and everything. Where as long as we didn't step over these things, there shouldn't be a problem. But what about thievery or all this stuff? Like if I did the work, I should have what I am worth, right? I earned that. That's mine, right? So if I built a massive building for somebody because that's what they wanted, what would be my payment, right? If there's no currency, what would they do? Give me food? I don't need that. I got a farm, right? I mean, I got a farm. I work that farm, but I also go and build stuff for people. So what could they possibly give me as a currency, right? I mean, what? Some random places just be like, oh yeah, you did this and this and this. Yeah, you can have internet. silly conversations like that would happen. It would flood the courthouses, essentially, or court space rather, not courthouses, court space. It's where people make decisions for the country, right? You could call it court spaces. Silly goose. There's a term for it, and I'm just not thinking of it. It's pretty simple though. Either case. So when you remove government or a marketplace from an entire people, I would like to just say the human race, you have to replace it with something that is comparable and has great order and great value that can distribute. Now, we've always placed our currency and value in material things. And because of this, we tend to seek material objects to recompense for that value that we feel we're worthy of it. Because with it, we feel like that's how we achieve our personal understanding of value. So currency makes sense, right? And then we can use that raw currency to get whatever we feel that we've earned. So if I feel that that watch or that new phone or something that somebody else created, so I work to create stuff for other people so I can go and buy stuff that other people created that I think is really cool. Okay, that makes just as much sense as I have this farm and I work this farm and I sell it to people, or they trade stuff with me. And then I come over here and I build this building with materials in which I traded with that farm. So what do they got to trade with me? I already got a farm and I just built it. So what are they going to do? Give me materials, more materials, so I can go build something else? So it's more or less we lack the understanding of what new path we could blaze. If we're not blazing a new path currently to figure out how, whether or not that path could suffice, it's like research. It's no different than that. It's research. You do a lot of polls and research to see where the common ground is before you take a step. But you have radicals and extremists which think, oh, well, let's just take everything, destroy everything, and just go this way. And that creates a lot of frenzy and other radicals and extremists, rebellions and riots, and people go nuts. So what if I told you that currency doesn't and hasn't always been money? Well, of course it's not always been money. We've always had objects to trade. Like I said, let's say I'm a farmer, but I'm also a builder. So I go to the marketplace and I trade farming stuff, like fruits, vegetables, blah blah blah, meats. I'd have to go to the butcher for the meats, or unless I could do it myself. But in the meantime, I had to use salt, so I'd have to go